Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick. How's everyone going? It's time once again to take a look at the X-Wing meta, this time with the Kryat Cup, which had its 4th annual tournament weekend before last. Congratulations to the Carolina Kryats for putting on such an awesome event, and yes, an absolute shout out to you guys as well. I will put a link down in the description to the Carolina Kryats. They're a local X-Wing group for Carolina. They do a lot of really cool articles about how to play X-Wing. They have their own podcast. So yes, down below, send them your love, send them your subs and likes and whatever you have to do to make sure we get support out there for the community, because it is actually really cool that these clubs put on these major events. And I do just want to say quickly before we actually have a look at the results from this tournament that I really do wish that FFG would put a bit more of an effort into covering these events, even just in the form of articles and top 16 8 breakdowns, like kind of what I do, but in an official capacity, because we do get sort of top 8 articles about things from like system opens and like the worlds and that kind of thing. But I think FFG ultimately could be doing more. The way I get information for my videos is I basically find the results wherever I can, whether that be through List Fortress, List Juggler 2.0, or wherever I can find the event results, and I cobble these videos together as best I can. In fact, in the example of this tournament here, I actually had to go to a stream video on YouTube just to find someone's lists, because there's no official support for this. We do it as a community and we do a great job, but I think official support from FFG would be really, really good for this kind of stuff. So I just want to say at the top of this video that I really hope that FFG look at doing that sometime soon. Now, the Krayt Cup is not your standard X-Wing tournament. It uses the extended format, which I love, great to see, but it's not the typical individual success. Everyone brings their own list, their own faction, whatever they want, like they would in a typical hyperspace or systems open. This is a team event. In the Swiss on day 1, the various teams are paired up against each other throughout the various rounds. And there are also list building requirements based on those teams in particular. Now, in the past, we've only ever had 3 factions with team events. Now we have 5, and we're about to have 7. So there's no longer a requirement to have multiple players playing on the same faction anymore. So now, in the example of this team event, we had teams of 4, and nobody had to play the same faction. So it was a stipulation that everyone in the team must play a different faction. And unlike other team events, there was no unique rule across the list within a certain team. So there could be multiple Sabines and Fens and whatever across the different lists within the same team, which in terms of meta play doesn't really make that much of a difference. There's no named pilot or crew card that's really punching very high across several factions, but it is worth knowing that. Now, usually with these meta watch videos, I do make a point of doing the breakdown of the ships being flown, the factions, the size of the ships, the number of ships in every squad. I'm not going to do that in this video because of the nature of team building events, because of the simple fact that everyone is not free to make whatever list they can. It's not that informative in terms of meta play. It really is just better just to have a look at the individual lists, which is what I'm going to do. Now, in terms of factions, yes, it is worth pointing out that some may not be that represented because they're simply terrible and trash. But even in the instance of this breakdown, I'm going to have a look at the top 4 teams. Every faction had representation. The only slight anomaly is 3 of the 4 teams did not take an Empire list. Having said that, the winning team did. So I'm not going to come to any major statistical conclusions based on that. I'd rather just have a look at these lists and talk about some of the spice that was being flown. So we're going to have a look at the top 4 lists going bottom to top. I will point out that on the results I was able to access, I couldn't differentiate between the 3rd and 4th teams. They also, because of the way the cut was played, basically the 4 highest scoring teams, that's the highest score of each individual within those teams, got to play off against each other in the cut. That does not mean the top 16 players got to play on day 2. Indeed, a lot of them did not. So that means a lot of players who didn't place anywhere near the top 16 actually got to play on day 2, which is quite cool. It makes the cut a bit more diverse, a bit more interesting, and there was a huge emphasis on casual play. Nevertheless, there were some very big names in this tournament as well. So the teams place at number 3rd and 4th. First of all, we have the Gimpy Gamer Squadron with Resistance First Order, Rebellion, and Scum. First of all, the Resistance list with Lieutenant Bastion, Jess Parva, Temin Wexley, and Lulu Lampur. A decent bit of value, being able to get out 3 X-Wings and an A-Wing, all of those X-Wings having named pilots. There's no Nia Num, Elo Atsi, or of course even Poe Dameron, because we definitely can't afford that. Being able to supercharge Jess Parva seems like a really powerful thing to be able to do on the Resistance. And once again, it does go to show you can absolutely feel these X-Wings and A-Wings at a massive point span, either really cut back or really stacked, and they still seem to perform well, which is really, really cool. On the first order, we had Blackout, Lieutenant Tavson, and Quick Draw. Just a bunch of stuff that's doing well right now. Not a whole heap to say. We have the TIE Silencer at Initiative 5. I've spoken about this before. Blackout doesn't really seem to be performing based on their pilot ability. It's just the fact that you have such a cool platform, Initiative 5. Fanatical Advanced Optics, just value, value, value. And Lieutenant Tavson, just a great brawler with Captain Phasma alongside Quick Draw, basically appearing in every single first order list right now. This is a bit of spice here. Lando Calrissian with 2 Grey Squadron bombers. The Y-Wing is seriously getting a bit of love right now. More so in hyperspace because it's a more powered down environment. Well, it's sort of powered down anyway. But Lando, I really love to see Lando. Another great option for a carrier for Leia Organa, being able to give those Grey Squadron bombers white K-turns. I dig that. This is a spicy, spicy list. Always happy to see Lando being flown. And this scum list, this is very, very interesting. Now, we're seeing another variation of Boba Fett here, but Perceptive Co-Pilot, Slave 1, just value. You've got a very high chance of using both of those focus tokens because of all of his rerolls. This is a nice, powerful list. Wouldn't mind trying this myself, actually. Looks like a lot of fun. Let's move on to Team Derek Tokaz with Derek Tokaz and friends. Rebellion, First Order, Resistance, and Scum. On the Rebellion, we have Biggs Darklighter, Gold Squadron Veteran, Benthic 2 Tubes, and Even Verlaine. Even's a very interesting include here. Basically, we have a relatively more powered version of a Leia list. We've just gone for the 4 platforms this time. Biggs Darklight is interesting included, actually. We have Selfless on 2 of your platforms and Biggs, so your opponent can't just hammer Benthic 2 Tubes and take Leia off the board. That seems like a very good way to pay off having less platforms alongside Leia. I dig that a lot. Finch, Lulo, and Poe Dameron. Yes, a nice couple of hard-hitting aces alongside Finch Dello. Tragedy Simulator with bombs and charges. Yeah, that seems really, really decent. Can be a lot of fun. We have an Upsilon with Lieutenant Tavson once again, with a couple of first order test pilots. This one's very, very interesting. We spoke about these generic TIE Silencer pilots recently on the channel. Given that dice consistency is a little bit worse than it used to be, just having a lot of decent stats and a lot of dice to throw actually seems like a pretty good thing to have. Also, Paul Heaver with Lando, Old Terok, and Boba. In fact, this is one of 2 of this list archetype to be flown in this tournament. And it seems really, really decent. I'm seeing a lot of speculation on Boba with this Trick Shot Kira and Slave 1 variant. And sort of flavor to match, we have some bombs, rigged cargo chute, all that kind of cool stuff. And I really, really dig this. I really think this is something to look out for. A lot of people are sort of convinced that Boba Fett is unflyable now that the points have changed. And honestly, guys, I think he's just fairer than he was. He may have been pushed a little bit too hard with points, so he can't be matched with a lot of degenerate stuff, but we're still getting Old Terok and Lando on the board, and those guys are great value as it is, so I don't think the Scum faction is out of it because of how hard Boba was hitting that points change. Indeed, yeah, Trick Shot Kira and Slave 1 is a nice synergistic build, and I really like that we have a home for Kira. It seems like an ability that is costly because you have to use an action just to be able to fly over one single rock, when there are things like Dash Render that can just do it all the time and fly over rocks and shoot and just be ugly and degenerate and annoying all the time. But Dash Render isn't that popular right now because he's on a big ship. Boba isn't. And it seems really, really interesting. I actually had a chance to watch some of Paul's games over on Twitch, and I would recommend it. The way we can use Kira, it basically favors the better pilot because you actually have to sacrifice your action economy, but if you fly in such a way that you're not shooting, you can use those precious moments to get those target locks on the rock and just really punish your opponent by outflying them. It's really cool. I love the way that Kira and Boba Fett interact with each other. Really cool combination. Hope to see more of it. Okay. Let's move over to the runner-up list. And this is a bunch of Aussie lads. The team name was, I'm going to get this right, capital X, lowercase f, capital R, 9, lowercase I, capital Y, 5, lowercase y, 94, lowercase s. And in case you guys are wondering, yes, that is a fragment of a YouTube link. Go there and you will learn some very, very important Australian culture. So this time we have First Order Rebellion, Resistance, and Scum once again. On the First Order, we once again have Lieutenant Tavson, a popular choice at the moment, with Petty Officer Thanison and Captain Phasma. So we got the stress combo going on there. Be curious to see how successful that was. That seems really, really cool. We've got a couple of Mega Squadron experts in the Thai SF alongside TN3465. That's very, very aggressive and controlling. I like the idea of this list. Seems pretty decent. Also, just Trickshot as the value card on a Mega Squadron expert. I'm going to say it once more, guys. Trickshot is the bomb. Do not ignore this card. On the Rebellion, we have Lando, Wedge, and Luke, a super stripped back version of all these pilots. Especially Luke Skywalker. Very rarely see him without something like instinctive aim. But Lando in the Num's a pretty solid build. It's basically like having a super coordinate on the platform. I've spoken about this before, powering out those free actions to your friendlies. Seems like a pretty decent trade-off for the proton torpedoes we'd often see on Wedge and Luke, so very curious about that. Marcus, how you going, mate? Hope you're watching the video. Big shout out to you, man. With Greer Snell, Taliesin Lintro, Lulo Lampor, all in A-Wings with Heroic and Crackshot. Dig that. Poe Dameron with Heroic R4 Astromech Integrated S-Foils Black 1. And an HLC. Oh, the value. I do love that. Now, you got to be careful with HLC. I've flown it myself and I constantly forget to close and open the S-Foils, but when you get that HLC shot off when your S-Foils are closed, man, that's powerful. Also, happy to see yet another different talent combo with these A-Wings. Heroic and Crackshot is a very, very spicy option. I think for myself, I like the value of Trickshot too much to take Crackshot, but if you are the kind of pilot which is really good at jousting and really good at lining up those bullseye shots, Crackshot's going to have so much value. Seems really, really decent. Also, on the Scum faction, Lando, Old Terrorcon, on Boba Fett once again. Now, a bit of a difference here. Lando only has TAC Officer this time, and Boba Fett has Seismic Charges instead of Proxy Mines. So, as I said, flavor to match. But the basic bones of this list seems really, really decent. Really curious to see whether we see more of this in the future for the Scum faction. Okay, let's move on to the White Walkers. This was the winning team for this event. So congrats to Duncan Howard, Josh Holt, Nathan Eade, and Zach Matthews. With the First Order, Empire, Resistance, and Rebellion. And there is some real spice on this. I'm really glad to see this. Now, first of all, it is worth pointing out that yes, this tournament took place I think on the day that FFG announced that they were changing the points on the hyperspace tracking data and Lieutenant Dormitz. So this list that we're seeing by Duncan Howard actually is right now illegal. Having said that, you could just change out a few key things if you really wanted to here. But you do have to really appreciate the fact of how much powered down it is, how more agency you give your opponent when you can't place all of your ships at Initiative 6 and deploy them up the field from Lieutenant Dormitz. It is a really powerful thing that Upsilon class list used to be able to do. So if you want to think about doing anything like this in the future, you do have to appreciate that fact. However, I will say that when that announcement was made, I got a lot of comments on various social media platforms talking about the fact that, well, we'll just switch out Lieutenant Dormitz for Quick Draw and just fly 2 Upsilons and Quick Draw instead. So I still think this is something to think about, but obviously it's not going to be exactly in this form. Very curious about what happens with that in the future. I think a good Upsilon pilot can still fly this to success, but we're not going to see it in the quantities that we have up until this point in 2nd edition. Moving over to a TIE Swarm. Awesome. Great to see. Trajectory Simulator, Redline, all of those really oppressive things on TIE Swarms have had a massive shift thanks to that first points change. I'm super happy to see this. Given that we're moving into Wave 3 with potential Vulture Swarms being a thing, it's very good to see TIE Swarms. I would love to see TIE versus Vulture Swarms. after Wave 3 comes out. I think that could be super fun. We'll wait and see what happens there. I love the way all these pilot abilities work together. I've already spoken about this kind of stuff ad nauseum. Academy Pilot Wampa, yes, excellent. We got some Infernos in there. We got Howlrunner for rerolls. This is really spicy. I really dig this. Nathan Eade not using Corran Horn. Dude, what are you doing? But we do have Poe, Lulo Lampor, Taliesin Lintra, and a Blue Squadron recruit. It's still pretty acey and powerful. I guess Poe Dameron is a pretty good substitute for Corran Horn, but come on, what's going on here, Nathan? Come on, you are the Corran Horn man. Poe's build, Predator BB-8 integrated S-foils, Ferrosphere paint and Black 1, an entirely different build to the one on the runner-up list. Seems really, really fun. Lulo and Taliesin, and a Blue Squadron recruit. Doesn't seem like a bad use of the extra points. And once again, I have to point out, just look at the different levels of builds we can get with these X-Wings and A-Wings, like XXA, XAAA, or XAAX, and yeah, you can basically flavor and match with these, and the Resistance have some pretty powerful options. We saw before Finch Dalo, the Resistance Bomber, of the Star Fortress, I guess, as it's called now, is a decent option as well. Unfortunately, not many Falcons being flown, but I really like where the faction's at right now. Really excited to see what we can do with that. As a Resistance player myself, very happy indeed. Also on the Rebellion, Han Solo and 2 Partisan Renegades. Oh yes, I like that. Leia, where's Leia? There she is on a Partisan Renegade. I knew she was in here somewhere. Really powerful on the U-Wing, being able to do those full stops, 90-degree turns. There's still white maneuvers, which means you can actually do it again the next turn, which is really, really cool. Han can turn his S-loops white. Look, I've spoken about Leia before. The power level of this card for 2 points is absurd. I'm very much predicting, now that we've seen multiple tournaments in a row, with a consistent representation of Leia, that she's going to go up. I don't think by a whole heap, maybe up to like 4 or 5 points, but I think 2 points is a bit of an overcorrection, if I'm to be honest. I mean, it's great to see another Millennium Falcon being flown here, but I hesitate to get too excited about this because of Leia. I think Leia is ultimately supercharging Han, which maybe makes him a bit better than he would otherwise be. I'd love to see the Rebel Falcon get play based on its own merit, but I'm not convinced it's all the way there. I'm not convinced Han would be played in this list, in this archetype, if Leia wasn't here. I think Leia is the glue that holds this list together, and that's really, really powerful and good. But I'm just trepidatious about saying, yay, Han's back, just yet. A cool list nonetheless. R2 and C-3PO for some absolute spot-on flavour. Dig it. Really like where these U-Wings are at right now. I like the fact that Leia is making U-Wings relevant. I like the fact that she's doing so much on the Rebellion. But I think it is worth saying, yes, I would prefer to see these things sort of stand up on their own 2 legs. That's just my 2 cents on the issue anyway. And indeed a really cool tournament. Always love looking at these sort of alternate format, community-driven stuff. We'll continue to cover them on the channel because I think it's one of the cooler things about this X-Wing community. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned. Plenty more Meta Watches to come in the near future. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Reddit. Please consider supporting my Patreon. Thank you so much to all of the patrons, including Psych J7. Thank you for giving me all this information on the Kryat Cup. Really appreciate it, and all of the interaction we get on the Patreon Discord. It is seriously, seriously good for the channel. If you guys want to be involved with that, all the links are down there in the description. Just click through to that, and it'll explain on Patreon how that's all done. In the meantime, I'll catch you guys in the next video.